Part 1. The day the sky bled, the morning sun rose over New Haven Colony like it did every other day. Danny Cole stood on the balcony of his small home, drinking his coffee and watching the purple sky turn golden. Kepler 22b was not Earth, but after 15 years, it felt like home. The air smelled different here, sweeter somehow, and the gravity was just light enough to make his old knees feel young again. "Dad, are we still going to the caves today?" His daughter Molly appeared behind him, still wearing her pajamas. She was turning 12 today, and Danny had promised her an adventure in the crystal caves beneath the mining district. "Of course we are," Danny said, smiling at her. "Get dressed. We leave in an hour." Danny had served 20 years in Earth's intelligence corps before retiring to this quiet colony world. He had studied alien species, learned their languages, analyzed their ships. But those days were behind him now. He was just a father, living a simple life on a world far from the politics of the galaxy. The Valorian Dominion controlled most of the known galaxy. They were an old species, proud and powerful, with thousands of warships and 12 star systems under their rule. Humanity was new to space, with only a handful of colonies and a small fleet of trading vessels. The Dominion had never paid much attention to humans. They were too small, too weak, too unimportant. But New Haven sat on rich deposits of rare minerals. Minerals the Dominion wanted. 3 months ago, a Valorian trade delegation had arrived with a simple offer: give us your mines or face consequences. The colonial governor had refused. These were human lands, human resources. They would not simply hand them over. Danny had warned the governor that the Valorians did not make empty threats. But like most humans, the governor believed in diplomacy. He believed that reasonable beings could find reasonable solutions. Danny and Molly reached the caves just before noon. The crystal formations glowed with soft blue light, and Molly ran ahead, her laughter echoing off the stone walls. Danny walked slowly, enjoying the peace, trying not to think about the Valorian ships that had been spotted at the edge of the system. The first explosion came without warning. The ground shook so hard that Danny fell to his knees. Dust rained from the ceiling of the cave, and somewhere above them, he could hear the rumble of something terrible. Molly screamed and ran back to him, and Danny held her tight, covering her body with his own as the world seemed to come apart. The shaking lasted for what felt like hours, though it was probably only minutes. When it finally stopped, Danny grabbed Molly's hand and ran toward the cave entrance. But when they emerged into the daylight, he stopped and could not move. New Haven was gone. Where the city had stood, there was only fire and smoke. The buildings, the parks, the schools, the hospital where his wife had died 3 years ago, all of it was burning. The sky was filled with ash, and through the darkness, Danny could see the shape of a massive ship hanging in the atmosphere. A Valorian cruiser, its weapon systems still glowing from the attack. 43,000 people had lived in New Haven. Men, women, children. Families who had left Earth seeking a better life. They were all dead, killed in a matter of minutes because they had refused to give up their home. Molly was crying, asking questions Danny could not answer. He picked her up and carried her back into the caves, away from the horror outside. They would wait until the Valorians left, and then they would find a way off this world. As they huddled in the darkness, Danny felt something change inside him. The fear faded, replaced by something colder and harder. He had spent his career studying the Valorians, understanding how they thought, how they fought. He knew their weaknesses, and now he would use that knowledge to make them pay. 8 hours later, the Valorian cruiser finally left. Danny and Molly emerged from the caves into a world of ash and silence. Nothing was left. The bodies were too burned to recognize. Danny found the remains of his home, now just a pile of melted metal and glass, and stood there for a long time. Holding Molly's hand, an emergency beacon was still functioning at the edge of the destroyed spaceport. Danny activated it and waited. 3 days later, a human rescue ship arrived. As they lifted off from the dead world, Molly pressed her face against the window and cried. Danny did not cry. He was done with tears. On Earth, the news of New Haven spread like fire. People gathered in the streets, watching the footage on massive screens. They saw the Valorian ship hovering over the colony. They saw the beams of light that reduced buildings to dust. They saw the death toll climbing higher and higher. Secretary of Defense Laura Bennett was in her office when the news broke. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes, but those who knew her understood that behind that quiet appearance was a mind as sharp as any blade. She had spent her career preparing for threats to Earth, but she had always believed that the biggest dangers would come from within, humanity itself. She had been wrong. The Security Council gathered within the hour. Presidents and prime ministers from every nation on Earth appeared on the screens, their faces pale with shock and anger. The Valorian ambassador had already sent a message: surrender all human colonies, or more worlds would burn. Laura listened to the debate. Some wanted to negotiate. Some wanted to surrender. Some wanted to fight but believed victory was impossible. The Valorians had thousands of ships. Humanity had barely 100. When the room fell silent, Laura spoke. Her voice was calm and steady. For 50 years, we have followed their rules. We have smiled at their insults. We have bowed our heads and hoped that if we were polite enough, peaceful enough, they would accept us as equals. And what did it get us? 43,000 dead. Children burned alive because we dared to say no. She looked at each face on the screens. The Valorians think we are weak. They think our kindness is cowardice. They are wrong. Our kindness was a choice. Our patience was a gift. And they have just lost both. She picked up her phone. Get me Admiral Hayes. In a secret facility beneath the surface of Mars, a message arrived. Admiral Kevin Hayes read it twice and smiled a cold, grim smile. The sleeping giant was waking up, and it was very, very angry. Part 2. The quiet before the storm. Admiral Kevin Hayes had spent 30 years waiting for this day. He had hoped it would never come. But deep in his heart, he had always known it would. The facility beneath Mars was called Site Zero. It did not exist on any official record. No politician knew about it. No journalist had ever written about it. For 3 decades, the best minds of humanity had worked here in secret, building something the galaxy had never seen. Admiral Hayes walked through the massive underground hangar, looking up at the ships that filled it. These were not trading vessels or exploration craft. These were weapons. Pure, brutal instruments of war designed for one purpose: to kill anything that threatened. Earth. The largest of them was the Reckoning. It was 2 kilometers long, covered in armor thick enough to survive a nuclear blast, and armed with weapons that could crack a moon in half. It was humanity's answer to the Valorian war cruisers. And it was only one of 12. Lieutenant Commander Katie Marsh was reviewing tactical data in her small office when the message arrived. She was 29 years old, with short brown hair and serious eyes that had seen too many simulations of battles humanity could never win. Her thesis at the Naval Academy had been titled Asymmetric: Warfare Against Technologically Superior Forces. Her professors had called it brilliant but pointless. We will never fight such a war, they had told her. The galaxy is at peace. Now she was being transferred to the Reckoning, assigned to the Tactical Operations Team. As she read the orders, her hands began to shake. Not from fear, but from the realization that everything she had studied, everything she had prepared for, was about to become real. The Valorians believed they understood war. They did not. Their species had evolved on a paradise world where food was abundant and predators were few. Their wars were formal affairs, fought with rules and rituals, ending when one side admitted defeat. They could not imagine a species that fought until extinction, that burned its own cities rather than let them fall, that had spent 10,000 years killing each other in increasingly creative ways. Humans had clawed their way up from the mud of Earth. They had survived ice ages, plagues, and disasters that had killed 90% of their kind. They had fought wars so terrible that they still could not speak of them without pain. And in that crucible of suffering, they had become something unique in the galaxy. They had become survivors. Admiral Hayes called a meeting of his senior officers. They gathered in the war room of Psych Zero, looking at holographic displays of Valorian positions across the sector. "The enemy expects us to surrender," Hayes said. His voice was deep and rough, the voice of a man who had spent his life preparing for a moment he had hoped would never arrive. "They believe we have no choice. They believe our fleet is too small, our technology too primitive, our species too young to pose a threat." He smiled, and there was no warmth in it. "They are about to learn otherwise." He activated a display showing the secret shipyards scattered across the solar system. Hidden in the asteroid belt, buried beneath the ice of Europa, concealed in the shadow of Luna, humanity had been building in secret for decades. "We have 12 dreadnoughts," Hayes continued, 47 cruisers, 200 fighters, and every single one of them was designed specifically to kill Valorian ships. Katie Marsh studied the tactical data with growing excitement. She saw weaknesses in the Valorian designs that she had only theorized about in her academy papers. Their shields were powerful but slow to adapt. Their weapons were devastating but required long charging times. Their tactics were predictable because they had never faced an enemy who refused to follow the rules. "Sir," she said, "their formation patterns assume honorable combat. If we use unconventional tactics, we can exploit gaps in their coverage." Admiral Hayes nodded. "Exactly. The Valorians expect us to fight their way. We will not. We will fight our way. And our way is to win at any cost." Meanwhile, Danny Cole was making his way back to Earth. He had managed to get himself and Molly aboard a refugee transport, joining the thousands of survivors from the outer colonies who were fleeing toward the safety of the home world. But Danny was not running away. He was going home to fight. His years in intelligence had given him knowledge that few others possessed. He understood Valorian ship systems, their command structures, their tactical doctrines. He knew how they thought, how they made decisions, how they reacted under pressure. And he knew their weaknesses. Molly sat beside him on the transport, staring out at the stars. She had not spoken much since leaving Kepler 22b. Danny wanted to comfort her, to tell her that everything would be okay. But he could not lie to his daughter. Nothing was okay. The galaxy was about to burn. "Dad," Molly said quietly, "are we going to die too?" Danny took her hand. "No," he said. "We are not going to die. And the people who killed our friends are going to wish they had never heard of Earth." When they arrived on Earth, Danny was immediately contacted by military intelligence. They needed his expertise. He agreed to help, but only on one condition: Molly would be safe. They arranged for her to stay with his mother in a secure facility, far from any military target. As Danny said goodbye to his daughter, he felt the cold anger inside him crystallize into something unbreakable. He would see this through. He would make the Valorians pay for every life they had taken. And then he would come home to Molly. That was his promise. The Valorians waited for humanity's response to their ultimatum. They expected begging, pleading, desperate offers of negotiation. What they received instead was a single transmission, broadcast on every frequency. In every known language of the galaxy. Secretary Laura Bennett sat in front of the camera, her face calm and cold. Behind her, the flags of every nation on Earth hung in silent witness. To the Valorian Dominion and all species of the galactic community, she began. You have seen what was done to our colony. You have seen the murder of 43,000 innocent people. The Dominion calls this a warning. They expect us to kneel. She leaned forward, and her eyes seemed to burn with an inner fire. We will not kneel. We will not beg. We will not surrender a single world, a single station, a single ship. You wanted war. You have it. You wanted to see what humanity is capable of. You will see. We gave you our hand in friendship, and you slapped it away. Fine. The hand of friendship is withdrawn. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was soft but carried a weight that made even the admirals in the room feel a chill. We're done being polite. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, beings of 100 different species watched the message in stunned silence. The Valorian High Command laughed at first. What could these primitives do against the might of the Dominion? But in the darker corners of space, older species who remembered ancient wars looked at each other with something like fear. They had seen that look before in the eyes of other species. Species that had been pushed too far, broken too badly, until all they had left was rage. Those species had been dangerous beyond measure, and now humanity was wearing that same look. In the hidden shipyards of Sol, engines began to roar. The Reckoning moved out of its dock for the first time, its hull gleaming black against the stars. Behind it came the rest of the fleet, a forest of steel and fire that should not have existed. Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge of the Reckoning, watching Earth grow small in the view screen. He thought of his grandchildren playing in the parks of his hometown. He thought of the 43,000 who would never play again. All ships, he said into the fleet-wide channel, begin war operations. May God have mercy on their souls, because we will not. The hunt had begun. Part 3. The Wrath of the Quiet Ones, the Valorian. Battle group emerged from jump space with the confidence of a hunter chasing wounded prey. 50 cruisers, each one capable of destroying a small moon, arranged in perfect formation. Fleet Commander Zekril stood on his bridge, watching the tactical display with amusement. The humans were running. According to his sensors, the entire human fleet was retreating toward the gas giant the primitives called Saturn. It was pathetic, really. Did they think hiding behind a planet would save them? The Dominion had destroyed hundreds of species. This would be no different. All ships pursue, Zekril ordered. Let none escape. Katie Marsh sat at her console aboard the Reckoning, watching the Valorian fleet follow them deeper into Saturn's ring system. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady. Everything was going according to plan. For decades, humanity had been preparing this trap. The asteroid belt around Saturn was no longer just rock and ice. Hidden among the natural debris were thousands of weapons platforms, nuclear mines, and sensor jammers. The Valorians saw nothing unusual because the camouflage was perfect. They were walking into a killing field, and they did not even know it. Admiral Hayes watched the enemy positions on his display. The Valorians were deep in the ring system now, their formation spreading out as they navigated between the asteroids. They were exactly where he wanted them. Commander Marsh, he said calmly. Your assessment? Katie ran the calculations one more time. They're in optimal position, sir. Their formation is extended. Their shields are in navigation mode rather than combat mode, and they can't retreat quickly through the debris. Hayes nodded. Then let's welcome them properly. All units, execute hammer strike. The ring system exploded into light. Hidden weapons platforms opened fire from every direction. Nuclear mines detonated in cascading chains. Missiles that had been drifting silently among the asteroids came alive and screamed toward their targets. The Valorians went from hunters to hunted in a single heartbeat. Fleet Commander Zekril stared at his display in disbelief as red warning lights filled his bridge. Ships were dying. His ships. Cruisers that had served the Dominion for centuries were being torn apart by weapons that should not exist. How is this possible? He whispered. It was possible because humanity did not fight fair. They never had. From the first cavemen who used a rock as a weapon to the generals who dropped nuclear bombs on their own kind, humans had always embraced whatever tactics gave them victory. Honor was a luxury. Survival was everything. The Reckoning emerged from behind a large asteroid, its weapons already firing. Katie Marsh commanded the tactical systems, directing fire with cold precision. She had spent years in simulations, learning exactly where Valorian shields were weakest. Now she applied that knowledge to real targets. Focus fire on their engine sections, she ordered. Disable, then destroy. The first Valorian cruiser broke apart under concentrated fire. Then the second. Then the third. The survivors tried to form a defensive formation, but they were surrounded. Human ships appeared from hiding spots all around them, like wolves emerging from a forest. Zekril ordered a retreat, but it was too late. The debris field that the Valorians had so casually entered now became a cage. Their large ships could not maneuver quickly enough. They crashed into asteroids, collided with each other, and all the while, human weapons continued to hammer them. The battle lasted 11 hours. When it was over, 47 Valorian cruisers had been destroyed. The remaining 3 fled into jump space, their hulls scarred and burning. Not a single human ship had been lost. On the bridge of the Reckoning, Admiral Hayes allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. It was not joy. He took no pleasure in killing. But it was something close to justice. Open a channel to the fleet, he said. His image appeared on every human ship, and his words were transmitted across the solar system. Today we have taught the Dominion a lesson they will never forget. They thought our politeness was weakness. They thought our patience was fear. They were wrong. Our politeness was a choice. Our patience was a gift. And they have thrown both away. He paused, looking into the camera with eyes that had seen too much death. They thought we were prey. They have learned that we are predators. And now we hunt. Danny Cole watched the victory broadcast from his office in Military Intelligence Headquarters. He had helped plan this battle, providing crucial information about Valorian tactics and weaknesses. But he felt no celebration. 43,000 people were still dead. His home was still Ashdod. This was only the beginning. The news of Saturn spread across the galaxy like a shockwave. The Valorians tried to hide the defeat, but there were too many witnesses, too many transmissions intercepted by neutral species. Within days, everyone knew. The humans had crushed a Valorian battle group without losing a single ship. Species that had been considering joining the war against Earth suddenly found reasons to remain neutral. The ones who had always secretly feared the Dominion began to wonder if humanity might be the power that would finally break their chains. On Velar Prime, the Supreme Regent received the news in stunned silence. He had ruled the Dominion for 200 years. He had never known defeat. How many ships did they have? He asked. His military advisor checked the reports. Initial estimates suggest fewer than 20 warships, along with automated weapon platforms. 20 ships destroyed 50 of ours? Yes, Supreme One. The Regent sat back in his throne, his mind racing. This was impossible. Humans were primitives. They had no military tradition, no advanced technology, no experience in galactic warfare. Yet they had just humiliated his fleet. Deploy the home fleet, the Regent ordered. All of it. I want every human world reduced to dust. And bring me their leaders alive. I will make them suffer for this insult. Back on Earth, Secretary Laura Bennett received intelligence reports on the Dominion's response. The enemy was mobilizing everything they had. Hundreds of ships, maybe thousands. The victory at Saturn had bought humanity time, but the real war was still coming. She called a meeting with Admiral Hayes via secure channel. "They're sending everything," she said. "Can we hold?" Hayes considered the question carefully. "We can hurt them, badly, but we can't defeat their entire fleet in a straight fight. We need to be smart. We need to make them bleed for every light year they advance. And if they reach Earth?" Hayes' expression hardened. "Then we make them pay such a price that no species will ever threaten humanity again. Even if we fall, we will fall so hard that the sound of it will echo across the galaxy for 1,000 years. Laura nodded slowly. "Then make it count, Admiral. Make every death matter." "I intend to," Hayes replied. "And when this is over, the Dominion will not exist anymore. That is my promise to the dead of New Haven." The channel closed. Laura sat alone in her office, looking at the blue marble of Earth visible through her window. Billions of people down there, living their lives, trusting their leaders to keep them safe. She would not fail them. Katie Marsh was promoted to full commander after the battle. She accepted the new rank quietly, without ceremony. There was no time for celebrations. New operations were being planned, and she was needed as she reviewed the tactical data for the next phase. She thought about her parents, who still lived in a small town in Kansas. They had no idea what she was doing, what she had done. They only knew their daughter was serving on a ship somewhere. She hoped she would see them again. But if she did not, she hoped they would be proud. The galaxy was watching humanity now, and humanity was just getting started. Part 4. The hunt begins. The Valorian home fleet was the largest military force in the galaxy. 300 warships, including 12 planet killers capable of destroying entire worlds. They moved through space like a swarm of steel locusts, their sensors searching for the human fleet that had humiliated them at Saturn. Supreme Regent Laurent watched the fleet's progress from his palace on Velar Prime. His advisors assured him that victory was inevitable. The humans had won one battle through trickery. They could not defeat the full might of the Dominion. But deep in his old heart, Laurent felt something he had not experienced in centuries. He felt doubt. The humans were not behaving like a conquered species should. They were not retreating to their home world. They were not sending desperate pleas for mercy. Instead, they had gone silent. Their fleet had vanished into the darkness between stars. Varan did not know that. Dr. Sam Porter had just achieved the impossible in a secret laboratory on Luna. Sam and his team had spent 3 months studying the wreckage of Valorian ships destroyed at Saturn. The alien technology was advanced but not incomprehensible. And within the twisted metal, Sam had found something extraordinary: a working jump drive. The Valorians could cross between star systems in hours. Humanity had always been limited to slow travel that took months or years. That single disadvantage made any war against the Dominion seem hopeless. But Sam Porter was not interested in what was hopeless. He was interested in what was possible. Working with captured alien technology and humanity's own experimental physics, his team created something new: the hybrid drive. It combined human engineering with Valorian principles, creating a system that could move ships across the galaxy faster than anything that Dominion possessed. Admiral Hayes received the news with fierce joy. The game had changed. "How many ships can we equip?" he asked. "All of them," Sam replied. "We've already begun installation. Within 2 weeks, the entire fleet will be mobile." 2 weeks later, the human fleet vanished from the solar system. The Valorian scouts that had been watching Earth reported the departure with confusion. Where were the humans going? And what were they planning? They were going hunting. The first target was the Dominion shipyard at Velar 3, the largest construction facility in the Empire. Hundreds of ships were built there every year. If it was destroyed, the Dominion's ability to replace their losses would be crippled. Commander Katie Marsh led the assault. Her strike group emerged from jump space in perfect formation, catching the shipyard's defenders completely off guard. The Valorians had never imagined that humans could reach this far into their territory. Their response was slow, confused, unprepared. Katie did not give them time to recover. All fighters, attack pattern Delta, she ordered. Target the construction bays and fuel reserves. Make it burn. Human fighters swarmed through the massive shipyard like angry bees. They were smaller and faster than anything the Valorians had, designed for exactly this kind of close-range combat. Within minutes, the first construction bay was in flames. Then the second. Then the third. The Valorian defenders finally organized a response, but it was too late. Katie's cruisers had positioned themselves between the shipyard and any escape routes. Anything that tried to flee was destroyed. Anything that stayed was incinerated by the spreading fires. In less than 2 hours, the largest shipyard in the galaxy was reduced to drifting wreckage. Katie watched the destruction with cold satisfaction. This was for New Haven. This was for the 43,000. This was humanity's message to anyone who thought they could murder innocents without consequence. Across the Dominion, similar attacks were happening. Human strike groups appeared without warning, destroyed military targets, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. The Valorians had no idea how to respond. Their entire military doctrine was based on set-piece battles between large fleets. They had never faced an enemy that fought like this. Danny Cole was now serving as the primary intelligence advisor for the campaign. His knowledge of Valorian systems helped identify the most valuable targets. He worked 16-hour days, poring over data, looking for weaknesses. Every dead Valorian soldier was a payment against the debt they owed. It was not enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. The Dominion's allies began to panic. Species that had joined the Empire for protection now found themselves wondering if they had chosen the wrong side. When human envoys arrived offering simple terms neutrality in exchange for peace, many accepted immediately. One by one, the Dominion's coalition fell apart. Back on Earth, Molly Cole was living with her grandmother in a secure facility in the mountains of Colorado. She was not allowed to watch the news, but she heard things. She heard that her father was part of something important. She heard that humans were winning. At night, she dreamed of fire. She dreamed of New Haven burning, of running through caves while the world shook around her. She woke up screaming, and her grandmother held her until she stopped crying. But in the morning, she would read her father's letters. He wrote to her every day, even when he had only a few minutes between briefings. He told her about the stars, about the ships, about the brave people who were fighting to keep Earth safe. "We are doing this for you," he wrote in one letter. "We are doing this so that no child ever has to watch their home burn again. Be strong for me, Molly. When this is over, I will come home, and we will build a new life together. I promise." Molly kept every letter in a box under her bed. She read them whenever she felt afraid. Admiral Hayes was reviewing casualty reports when the intelligence team brought him devastating news. The Dominion, desperate and angry, had activated their final weapon, a planet killer aimed directly at Earth. The device was called the Void Hammer. It was old technology, built during an ancient war, capable of shattering a world into pieces. The Valorians had kept it hidden for centuries, hoping never to need it. But now, facing extinction, they were willing to destroy everything. How long until it reaches firing position? Hayes demanded. 6 weeks, the intelligence officer replied. It's heavily protected. A full battle fleet surrounds it. Hayes looked at the tactical display, his mind racing. 6 weeks to stop a planet killer. 6 weeks to save 8 billion lives. "Get me Cole," he said. "And Commander Marsh, we need a plan." Danny arrived within the hour. He had already heard the news, and his face was pale but determined. "I know how to get to it," Danny said. "The Void Hammer was built by a species the Valorians conquered long ago. I studied their technology during my intelligence days. There are weaknesses, maintenance hatches, power conduits. If we can get a small team inside, we can disable it. And the fleet protecting it? We create a diversion," Katie said, joining the conversation. "We hit their home world. Velar Prime. Nothing they have will be able to resist responding to that. While their fleet rushes home, our strike team takes out the planet killer." Admiral Hayes considered the plan. It was risky. It required perfect timing, incredible bravery, and more than a little luck. But it was also humanity's only chance. "Do it," he said, "and may God help us all." Preparations began immediately. The strike team would need to be small enough to avoid detection but skilled. Enough to take on whatever security waited inside the void. Hammer. Cole volunteered. "To lead it. This is my fight," he said when Hayes tried to argue. "They killed my home. They killed my friends. If we fail, I want to be the last thing they see before they die." Hayes looked at the man before him, a father, a soldier, a survivor, and saw something that could not be argued with. He saw absolute determination. "Come back alive," Hayes said finally. "You have a daughter waiting for you." Danny nodded. "That's exactly why I'm going to succeed." The plan was set. The pieces were in place. In 6 weeks, humanity would either save itself or watch its home world die. There would be no second chances. Part 5. The final message. Velar Prime was beautiful. It was a world of crystal towers and floating gardens, of ancient monuments and gleaming cities that had stood for 10,000 years. The Valorians had built their civilization on the bones of conquered species, and they had never imagined it could fall. Supreme Regent Varan stood in his throne room, watching the tactical display with growing terror. The human fleet had appeared at the edge of his system. Not a raiding party, not a small strike force. The entire human fleet, led by the black dreadnought called Reckoning. "Impossible," he whispered. "How did they reach us so quickly?" His advisors had no answer. But the truth was simple. Humanity had adapted. They had taken Valorian technology, improved it, and now they were using it to burn the Empire to the ground. Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge of the Reckoning, watching Velar Prime grow larger in the view screen. Around him, the human fleet formed into attack position. 60 ships faced a defensive force of over 100. "Sir, they're hailing us," the communications officer reported. "Put it through." The image of Supreme Regent Varan appeared on the screen. His ancient face was twisted with rage and fear. "Humans," he said, "you have come to die." Hayes smiled without warmth. "We have come to offer you a choice. Surrender unconditionally. Pay reparations for the massacre of New Haven, and disarm your military. Or we will make you do it." Varan laughed, but there was no confidence in the sound. "You are outnumbered. You cannot win." "We weren't supposed to survive Saturn either," Hayes replied. "And yet, here we are, at your doorstep, with nothing left to lose." The channel went dead. The Regent had made his choice. "All ships," Hayes ordered. "Attack." The Battle of Velar Prime began with fire. Human ships plunged into the Valorian defensive line like a spear into flesh. The Reckoning led the charge, its massive guns tearing through enemy cruisers. Behind it, Commander Katie Marsh directed the tactical operations with cold precision. She had studied this moment for years. Every simulation, every calculation, every theory, all of it had led to this battle. And now she was proving that everything she had learned was right. The Valorians fought desperately. Their planet was behind them. Their civilization was at stake. But they were facing an enemy that had been forged in fire, an enemy that knew only one way to fight forward. Across the galaxy, the Void Hammer was moving into position. In less than 3 hours, it would fire, and Earth would die. The distraction at Vela Prime was working. The defensive fleet had been recalled to protect the home world, but a small shuttle was already moving through the darkness toward the planet killer. Danny Cole sat in the cargo bay of the shuttle, checking his weapon for the 10th time. Around him, 11 other soldiers prepared for the mission that would decide the fate of their species. None of them expected to survive. All of them were going anyway. 2 minutes to dock. The pilot called out. Danny closed his eyes and thought of Molly. He remembered her laughter in the crystal caves of New Haven. He remembered her tears as they flew away from their burning home. He remembered the promise he had made to bring her back a better galaxy. He opened his eyes. "Let's go kill that thing," he said. The shuttle docked with the Void Hammer through a maintenance hatch. Just as Danny had predicted. The ancient weapon was vast, a ship the size of a small moon, but its security was designed to stop enemy fleets. Not a dozen angry humans with explosives. The team moved through the corridors in silence. They encountered guards and killed them without hesitation. They planted charges at every critical junction. They cut power lines and sabotaged control systems, and then they reached the core. The firing chamber was enormous, a cathedral of alien technology designed for one purpose: destruction. At its heart, a beam of concentrated energy was building, preparing to reach across space and shatter Earth into pieces. Danny looked at the chamber and felt something strange. Peace. This was where he would make his stand. This was where he would fulfill his promise. "Set the charges," he ordered. 5-minute timers. His team worked quickly. They placed explosives throughout the chamber, enough to tear the heart out of the weapon. But as they finished, alarms began to sound. Guards poured into the chamber from every entrance. "Go," Danny told his team. "Get to the shuttle." "I'll hold them." "Sir, we can't leave you. That's an order." He looked at them, and they saw the same determination that had carried him through every moment since New Haven. "Get out. Tell my daughter I love her. Tell her I kept my promise." The team retreated, fighting their way back toward the shuttle. Danny stayed behind, taking cover in the firing chamber, picking off guards one by one. He was not trying to win. He was buying time. 3 minutes. The Valorians rushed toward him in waves, but the chamber was narrow, and Danny was a very good shot. He killed 10, then 20. Then he lost count. 2 minutes. A blast caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He fell against a console, blood running down his arm. But he kept firing. 1 minute. More guards came. Too many. Danny was out of ammunition. He dropped his weapon and looked at the firing chamber, at the countdown on the console, at the explosives that would save his world. "For Molly," he whispered. "For Earth." The charges exploded. Back at Vela Prime, the human fleet had broken through the defensive line. Katie Marsh had led a strike group that destroyed the orbital defense platforms. The Valorian fleet was in chaos, their command structure shattered, their ships burning, and then the message came. The Void Hammer had been destroyed. Admiral Hayes received the news and closed his eyes for a moment. Danny Cole and his team had done it. Earth was safe. The battle continued for another 4 hours. But without the planet killer, without hope of destroying Earth, the Valorian will to fight collapsed. One by one, their ships surrendered. The defensive fleet, caught between the human attack force and their own burning cities, finally stopped firing. Supreme Regent Voran was captured as he tried to flee his palace. Human soldiers escorted him down the steps where he had once received tribute from 100 conquered species. Now he walked in chains. Admiral Hayes landed on Vela Prime and personally accepted the Dominion's unconditional surrender. He did not gloat. He did not mock. He simply stated the terms: reparations for New Haven, the complete disarmament of the Valorian military, and the dissolution of the Dominion as a political entity. The region had no choice but to accept that the war was over. 6 months later, a transport ship landed at a spaceport in Colorado. Molly Cole waited on the platform, her grandmother beside her, her heart pounding with hope and fear. The doors opened, and her father walked out. He had lost weight. His arm was still in a sling from his wounds aboard the Void Hammer, but he was alive. The rescue team had found him in the wreckage, barely breathing, protected by a structural beam that had fallen just right. Molly ran to him, and Danny caught her with his good arm. He held her tight, and for the first time since New Haven, he allowed himself to cry. "I came home," he whispered. "I promised I would come home." Secretary Laura Bennett addressed the United Nations the following week. Representatives from every nation on Earth were present, along with observers from a dozen galactic species. "We came to the stars hoping for friendship," Laura said. "We offered peace, trade, and cooperation. We were answered with slaughter." She looked at the alien observers, and they shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Let this be humanity's final lesson to the galaxy. We do not start wars, but we finish them. We are not cruel, but we are not weak. Push us, and we will push back. Hurt our children, and we will burn your worlds. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was soft but carried the weight of 8 billion souls. We are done being polite. Remember that. 20 years later, Commander Molly Cole stood on the bridge of the diplomatic vessel Olive Branch. She had grown into a woman who looked very much like her father, with the same quiet strength and the same determined eyes. She was Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council, and when new species were discovered, they were always told the same story. They were told about the Valorian War. They were told about the sleeping giant that humanity had always been. They were told about the mistake the Dominion had made by waking it. And somewhere in the archives of every spacefaring civilization, the message remained. A simple statement that carried more weight than any threat or promise. We're done being polite. No one ever tested humanity's patience again.